Israel's 3 conditions for a good Iran deal. Let's read it. Iran ends nuclear program. Already said that's not going to happen. Iran ends missile program. Already said that's not going to happen. Iran ends supporting proxies in Middle East. Come on. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? Professor Morandi responded saying, Iran's 3 conditions for a good deal. Israel ends nuclear program. Israel ends ethno-supremacism. Israel ends genocide. Yeah, I think that's more likely. I am convinced that every single story that comes out from Axios, comes out from, what is that guy's name? Something David, Rabak David or something like that. You know, all of these Mossad agents, right? I'm convinced every single one of these stories is fake. Because as has been described, and every single white paper from every single, U.S. military, U.S. defense think tank, what do they all say? What have they been saying for years? First of all, we need to target Iran. Wesley Clark exposed that. Simple fact. Iran doesn't have a Rothschild bank. Iran is not a vassal of the United States. I don't know. Maybe they want to establish some like 4 Seasons Tehran so they can broaden the scope of the Epstein network to another country. I don't know. But what I know for certain is that the most important fact in all of these think tanks from all these white papers from U.S. defense policy think tanks is they have always said that, of course, we want war in Iran. Of course, that's the goal here. Surround Iran, isolate Iran, cut Iran off, war in Iran. But we don't want the United States to take the blame for that. We want Israel to take the blame for that because the U.S. has a lot of military assets in the region and a lot of oil and gas and military bases. And the Strait of Hormuz is very important to us, and our markets. Our Wall Street's going to be they're going to be very upset. So what can we do? Of course, Iran is going to deal a heavy blow to the United States if we launch this war. But what can we do to lessen the war? Blame it all on Israel. Make it look like Israel's some rogue actor that's dragging the United States along with them. Of course, that doesn't really line up with the reality of the situation, right? It is the United States who's sending practically our entire, emptying out all of our U.S. military warehouses, sending them to surround Iran right now. 2 carrier strike groups, right? Destroyers, Globemasters, F-35s, F-15s, you name it, right? It is the United States who's doing that. It is the United States who just took the first, fired the first bullet, so to speak, of this war by launching a missile at a reconnaissance drone flying above the USS Abraham Lincoln. But we need to make it look like it's Israel dragging the United States along. We need to make sure that all of our Mossad puppets and pawns say that what? What do they need to say? That Trump really doesn't want a war. Officials say no one has been able to convince Trump to attack. Trump initially favored strikes during Iran's mass protests. He now believes military action would be the wrong move. I'm not a betting guy, but when I start seeing the stories like this, I'm like, maybe I should just put it all on black. Put it all on the black pill. War's going to start now. I'm convinced all these stories are a psyop. It's literally all fake. Another one today. C-37B heading to the Middle East. VIP U.S. military transport aircraft only used to carry high-ranking military officials. Currently, the plane is flying under the Army, indicating that U.S. Army officials are currently in the aircraft. In my eyes, it looks like most of the big meat and potato deliveries have arrived, have landed, right? Now they're just sending the final nail in the coffin, final icing on the cake, right? It's like, okay, well, we have all of our bits and pieces there. Now send in the big guns, the men who will pull the trigger on Tehran. But again, keep in mind, remember your Goyslop, AI Hasbara, Ben Shapiro talking points. Trump doesn't want the war. Say it with me, folks. Trump doesn't want the war. Trump doesn't want the war. I know that they're sending all these military assets over there. Trump doesn't want the war. Trump doesn't want the war. Give me a break. Give me a break. Israel had opposed the smaller scale strikes Trump was considering 3 weeks ago out of a sense that they would merely be symbolic and not worth the risk of massive retaliation. The dynamic has shifted. A succession of Israeli spies and generals, including IDF Chief of Staff General Eyal Zamir, have visited D.C. in recent days. Zamir briefed Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane on Israel's offensive and defensive plans in the event of a war with Iran. Quote, it's safe to say that nothing came out of the meeting to change his or the president's mind on attacking Iran, a U.S. official said, referring to Kane and Trump. It's really the Israelis who want to strike. The president is just not there. He's just not there, you guys. Trump totally doesn't want this. The U.S. totally doesn't want this. Israel believes the U.S. is using negotiations as a way to exhaust political legitimacy before turning to military action. If talks fail, and you better believe talks will fail. You better believe talks will fail. If talks fail, Trump could argue that all diplomatic options were tried and that Iran's refusal leaves no alternative but force. This assessment is reinforced by the unprecedented U.S. buildup in the region. Or maybe this has already all been planned. Maybe you're just getting psyoped into believing that these talks are real, just like you were psyoped into believing that the Oman talks, 7th round negotiations were real before the 12-day war. Yeah. Something tells me that the talks will fail. What could that be? Oh! Witkoff-Netanyahu meeting begins in Jerusalem. Oh, sorry, my mistake. They're in Jerusalem, not Tel Aviv. Joined by the heads of Israel's security services, Times of Israel. Oh, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff to lead Iran nuclear talks with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Istanbul on Friday. Yeah, something tells me these talks are going to fail. CNN, citing Israeli sources, say Israel will demand that Iran give up its enriched uranium and halt its ballistic missile program. What is the only problem with that? What's the only problem with that? Iran already said, we're not giving our enriched uranium to any third-party countries. We're not ending our nuclear program. And we're not giving up our ballistics program. The U.S. says, okay, fine, but you must give up your ballistics program, your enriched uranium, and your nuclear program. It's like talking to a brick wall. Except in this scenario, if the brick wall doesn't respond to you, you're going to get a bunch of fighter jets launching missiles at your civilians. That's really the correct analogy here. This is great content. U.S. CENTCOM commander, Admiral Bradley Cooper, predictive programming. It's all a movie. Admiral Bradley Cooper continued Iranian harassment and threats in international waters and airspace will not be tolerated. Whoa, I thought we were talking about spheres of influence. I thought that Trump could kidnap President Maduro because that's a sphere of influence. I thought that 2 weeks ago, after Trump was getting all that heat for kidnapping Maduro and his sphere of influence, as he put it, Trump said that China could deal with Taiwan however they see best fit because that is Xi Jinping's sphere of influence. Oh, what happened to the spheres of influence? This is Iran's sphere of influence. Let the Iranians deal with it. Iranians, UAE, Saudi, let them deal with it. What happened to the spheres of influence, man? It's just about the spheres of influence. Iran's unnecessary aggression near U.S. forces, regional partners, and commercial vessels increases risk of collision, miscalculation, and regional stabilization. Except, right, what actually happened. Iran sent a reconnaissance drone up in the air a few hours ago, and the U.S. sent up an F-35 to bomb it out of the sky. Except it wasn't just some normal collision, miscalculation, or regional destabilization, as Mr. Bradley Cooper put it, except the U.S. made a conscious decision to blow the shit out of that Shahed 139 out of the sky. Except the U.S. has all these drones in the same exact region, not their sphere of influence. Might I remind you, the U.S. has been flying these U.S. reconnaissance MQ-9s all across the region over the past week. Is that a risk to the partners of Iran, their commercial vessels? Risks of collision, miscalculation, and regional destabilization? Is it a risk to to those entities that the U.S. has sent two U.S. strike group carriers there, that they sent all this U.S. military hardware there? I'll explain it for you in the most succinct manner that I can. Israel really believes, that their shit smells like roses. They really believe it, right? It has been the justification of the state of Israel, of the continued arming of the state of Israel, of the endless support that is demanded by the state of Israel, and I should put state in quotations, right? Since its inception, that there is always another enemy that is going to destroy their state, and that enemy has to be eradicated, erased from the maps, erased from the history books, or else Israel will cease to exist. And the notion that they've also run with is that they have the capacity to do it, right? They do have the capacity to do it. That's what they believe. Doesn't matter how big, how strong, right? If it was Israel versus China, hypothetically, the Israelis would believe that somehow they could defeat China with a population of 1.2 billion, 1.4 billion, whatever it is, right? That's literally what they believe. And if you don't believe me, just imagine if Iran fell tomorrow. Iran ceased to exist tomorrow. Iran became a U.S., puppet state. And, Epstein got to leave the underground bunker on Little St. James Island and he got to go live in Tehran or something. Imagine that. What would happen next? Israel would sit back. They'd say, wow, well, we did it. Oh, geez, but wait. What about Turkey? Turkey's going to take us out. We have to do something about Turkey. Okay, let's launch the war on Turkey. Now imagine Turkey's gone. Turkey's gone. Okay, now Turkey's turned into a U.S. vassal as well. Turned into a U.S. vassal. Okay, let's imagine that Turkey is like fully a U.S. vassal, okay? Then the Israelis surely then will sit back and say, we did it, okay? We can sit back and, we can coexist now with all these U.S. vassals, right? No, actually, no. What about Pakistan? Oh my God, Pakistan. What about Pakistan? We have to take out Pakistan now, right? That's their mentality. Israel's 3 conditions for a good Iran deal. Let's read it. Iran ends nuclear program. Already said that's not going to happen. Iran ends missile program. Already said that's not going to happen. Iran ends supporting proxies in Middle East. Come on. What are we doing here? Professor Morandi responded saying, Iran's 3 conditions for a good deal. Israel ends nuclear program. Israel ends ethno-supremacism. Israel ends genocide. Yeah, I think that's more likely. Okay. Now from Ma'ariv, Israeli media says the negotiations this week will be very short, either war or unconditional surrender. Again, that doesn't really sound like the art of the deal, Trump deal making. That sounds like they already have a plan. They spent billions and billions of dollars in taxpayer money to surround Iran with all these military assets, and they're going to do the war. That's what it sounds like to me, personally. Iran has demanded changes. So this is in the 11th hour. Iran has demanded changes to the venue and format for negotiations with the U.S. this Friday. 2 sources with knowledge tell Axios. Iran has demanded changes to the venue and format for negotiations with the U.S. this Friday. 2 sources with knowledge tell Axios. The Iranians want to move the talks from Istanbul to Oman. They also now want to hold them in a bilateral format only with the U.S. rather than with several Arab and Muslim countries attending as observers. So this is interesting. Obviously, the Iranians do not trust any of these intermediaries or anything like that. I think this is a good decision. And they want to have them in Oman. I don't know why, but I think that this is actually a really good decision. Now, when I was with Hamas in Doha, Qatar, right? I was with Hamas. I interviewed Dr. Bassem Naim, who's on the Politburo of Hamas. And I also sat down with, I went back to the hotel. Then I came back and I had a long sit down with them. I don't know why that came in so late. Anyways, in the conversation, the interview, it was expressed to me that the Palestinians were not all that trustworthy of certain intermediaries in the negotiations that had been taking place at that time and for some time prior to that. And, in their eyes, obviously this was not possible because the one guy who literally from the Trump administration, I think it was one of Kushner's friends, he held like some direct meeting with Hamas and he got fired immediately after, right? Like that would have been, from what I could gather, all right, they said that they were untrustworthy of some of these intermediaries, either because things were being obfuscated and misrepresented by one side or another on purpose or, unwittingly. I think that the idea here is the Iranians have the same sort of problems. They need direct negotiations. They don't need a bunch of bullshit from a bunch of different, countries getting in the middle of what is primarily, actually, what is entirely a conflict between two main powers, two main potential belligerents, the Iranians and the United States. Everyone else, including Israel, by the way, is a sideshow to a conflict that is about to break out between the United States and Israel. I think that this is a brilliant move. I don't have any sort of understanding of why they want to do this in Oman rather than Istanbul. Maybe something is going on behind the scenes. Clearly, something is going on behind the scenes that we are not aware of. Anyways, as for the American demands, we went through the Israeli demands. The American demands just so happen to be the same exact three demands. From these 2 points, this is from Iran Observer. Number 2, removal of all enriched uranium from Iran, stored in Russia, stored in Turkey, whatever it is. Number 2 is by far the most important. Iran's 408 kilograms of 60% high enriched uranium poses the most immediate threat in terms of nuclear breakout capability. And the Trump administration either wants it removed from Iran or fully destroyed. Best case scenario they would maybe consider accepting is diluting the current stockpile to 20% and putting it under IAEA and American supervision. And even that would be hard to accept. Now, you know what's crazy about this? The whole reason why Iran decided that, hey, one day, we're going to decide to enrich our uranium up to 60%. Does anyone know why? It's because the United States, under the persuasion of Mike Pompeo and John Bolton, said, Trump, you should pull out of the Iran deal. You should pull out of the JCPOA and violate the terms of the agreement because we think Iran is working with al-Qaeda, even though every single U.S. intelligence agency, all 16, 18 of them, whatever it is, and all of their annual reports, each and every time, they said, obviously, no, Iran, Shia Iran is not working with al-Qaeda and Daesh, ISIS, right? They are, in fact, fighting them. Who is leading that fight? Qasem Soleimani, right? The martyr general that was killed in an American airstrike in Baghdad, Iraq, while he was there for diplomatic meetings with the Iraqis. Okay, so the whole reason why Iran increased their enrichment levels is because the U.S. pulled out of the deal. Iran stayed in the deal. But as per the terms of the deal that continued to exist between the Europeans then and the Iranians, because the U.S. pulled out, Iran, if the U.S. pulled out, was allowed to, and applied sanctions on Iran, was then allowed to enrich their uranium further up. That's what they did. So because of Trump's actions back then, he is now threatening war. He knew that would happen. They knew that would happen, right? This is all part of the plan. Because of that, they are now threatening war and saying, if you want us to not do war, which of course they're going to do war regardless. If you want us to not do war, get rid of the enriched uranium. Regarding number 1, I think Trump won't show any flexibility. The U.S. doesn't want Iran to enrich at all on Iranian soil, not because 3.67 enriched uranium needed for reactors poses a threat, but because enrichment requires active enrichment centers, meaning operational centrifuges. And those centrifuges could rapidly switch to enriching far beyond 3.67%, which is what America sees as a threat. There have been proposals about a regional enrichment consortium or enriching on a Persian Gulf island under U.S. supervision, but this seems unrealistic. Regarding 3, I think this is not a serious U.S. demand, as they know it's not rational and Iran will never agree. Ballistic missiles guarantee Iran's survival, and limiting the missile program would be tantamount to complete surrender. Limiting the missile program is mainly an Israeli demand, which they push the Americans to hold on to. All in all, there's extremely little wiggle room, and I'm pessimistic about the chances of success unless one side makes a major concession, which I don't see Iran doing. Some in the Iranian leadership even think a small conflict with US or Israel is necessary to reestablish deterrence. Appetite for a deal is generally low. And you even have Iranian conservative leaders today, which are coming out and saying that negotiating with America not only does not reduce military threats, but will increase them. Reason, experience. Only the number of American soldiers has an effect on America's military threats. Reason, experience. That was in response to President Masoud Pezeshkian, who came out with a statement, again, before he made that statement. And he said, in light of requests from friendly countries in the region to respond to the proposal by the president of the U.S. for negotiations, I have instructed my Minister of Foreign Affairs, provided that a suitable environment exists, one free from threats and unreasonable expectations, to pursue fair and equitable negotiations guided by the principles of dignity, prudence, and expediency. These negotiations shall be conducted within the framework of our national interests. This is a legendary quote. President Pezeshkian said this as well. Our position on negotiations can be summed up in 2 words. 2 words. If genuine and fair conditions prevail and the U.S. treats Iran as an equal, including a real building of trust with the cooperation of our regional friends, a deal can be made that aligns with our vital national interests. I'm having flashbacks. Oh, sorry. Is the audio not on? Why is the audio not on? You guys hear that? Oh, the audio's not on.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was in the foothills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping.
I'll sum it up in 2 words, folks. I'll sum it up in 2 words. America. There actually is no way to sum it up. Epstein regime. I'll sum it up in 2 words. By the way, the Israelis are making a bunch of like paranoid, schizophrenic, theories as to why Trump must strike Iran now. We've seen the Israelis come out and say that Hezbollah is going to join the fight if the U.S. strikes Iran. The Iranians have said, like, look, we don't need their support unless we ask for it, and we have not asked them for it. So there's that, okay? Radio Free Europe is pushing the propaganda. Europe is fully on board with this whole thing this time around. They are very involved. It is expected that the Iran-backed militias in the Middle East will engage in combat and provide support to Iran if U.S. President Trump fulfills his threat and launches an attack. And, I think I've seen this story before. Here we have Israel pushing a totally ludicrous story. U.S. flagged tanker approached by Iranian gunboats in the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian source in the Strait of Hormuz. This afternoon, a civilian ship entered territorial waters of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iranian border units, upon noticing this, requested the ship to present necessary permits. The ship lacked any legal authorization to be in these waters. Therefore, it was warned, and immediately after receiving the warning, the ship left Iranian waters. No specific security incident occurred, and the British company's claim is not true. They were pushing this lie. The CBS, the mainstream media, the Israelis, all across social media, you can see it right now. If you look up like Iranian speedboats, British vessel, it'll come up. They were saying that the Iranian vessels were following and trying to board a commercial Western vessel, and they were trying to seize the vessel, and they were going to take it, and it was IRGC terrorists going to take the vessel. Literally all bullshit made up, right? So, yeah, the war is going to happen, folks. I don't know what else to tell you. It's really as simple as that. you are watching nothing but another giant psyop. And this time, I hope you are all smart enough and, I guess, experienced enough not to fall for it. Before you leave, I want to say thank you for the support, because after 2 years of being banned, we are finally back home on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to our channel and also join as a member on our channel using the link at the top of the description. I rely on the generous support of viewers like yourself to get the truth out to as many people as possible. You can also support the show on Locals or Give Sin Go. The mainstream media and the powers that be are never going to stop attacking us for bringing the truth to as many people as we do. Thank you so much for your support.